Welcome back to Destination Aviation. I'm your host, Jeff Miller. As usual, who else would it be? I don't know who it could be. It could be anybody. But we have a phenomenal conversation with Beth Flippo today. And she does some stuff within the drone community and drone delivery. And it's a fascinating conversation. I already had it, so I'm pre-recording this. So I know it's fascinating. So I know up front that you're in for a good episode. So we'll hop right over to Beth and then finish up at the end with some show notes. Well, Beth, welcome to Destination Aviation.
So excited to be here.
I know. We set this up a little while back, and I've been doing my homework on you to try to make
Ooh.
sure that I can, have an intelligent conversation. I personally have never had a drone delivery, and everybody will understand what I mean when I say that after you get done talking about your background. But I have found in the podcast, generally our listeners, there's a good makeup between each episode, people that are in our industry, people that aren't in our industry. Maybe you could just talk a little bit about your background, Beth, how you got into the space you're in now, which I won't get into that just yet, but maybe from the early stages to how you came to be the CEO of DEXA.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll go way back. So I'm an engineer. Uh, I'm a New Yorker. So I went to the State University of New York at Binghamton, so upstate in the cold for 4 years. But I am an embedded software developer. So my expertise is in really building operating systems for microprocessors, microcontrollers, things that tend to lead towards mobility. I've always loved robotics. I love seeing a board that, just come alive, that first LED blinking, there's nothing like it. So that's the world I live in. It's a very lonely area of engineering. And after engineering, if you want to live in New York City and pay rent, you go into banking. So
Oh,
that's
fair
that's
enough.
what I did to pay the bills. So I worked at Paine Webber, which got bought by UBS. Then I was recruited to Goldman Sachs. And actually, I was downtown at Goldman on 9/11. And I know
Oh,
it
wow.
changed everybody's life,
Yeah.
especially mine. And I left to join Cantor Fitzgerald, which had lost 700 out of 1,000 employees. And they had promised the
Wow.
families 10 years of health care. And at that time, people didn't know if the company was going to make it. So I was young and ambitious and thought I could help. So I was there 5 years. By the time I left, they were back to the number of employees that they had before 9/11. But it really spurred that entrepreneurship in me because there was nobody to really ask for help. And, you had to figure out how to do everything on your own. All the red tape that I was used to at these other big banks was gone. And I had a tremendous mentor in my boss and, just loved that job. And after 5 years, my dad, who had started a very small defense contracting company back in 1984,
Oh, wow.
he and my mom, and he asked me to join the family business, saying, I'm going to retire eventually. He has never retired. It was all a big ruse to get me there. He
Fair
still
enough.
actually
Fair
he
enough.
still actually works for DEXA, which is kind of funny.
That is fantastic.
Yeah, but that is the first place I got to be an engineer and really build things. And we built wireless solutions for the military. So a lot of security, wireless radios, handheld radios, networking equipment, things like that. And one of the things that we made was a drone swarm mesh network that let drones talk to each other in the sky
Oh,
without
wow.
having to connect to the ground. So in the military, bandwidth is everything. And I thought this was great. And we started selling it to the military. And all of these commercial drone companies for doing drone delivery started contacting us saying, this radio solves BV loss, because at that time, we're talking 2018, the FAA didn't necessarily like cellular
Yeah.
as a guaranteed communication platform for drones. They wanted redundant communications. So I never sold anything commercial. We didn't work that way. I didn't sell one or two of anything. So I told my dad, I'm like, I think I got a commercial company here. I'd like to spin it off and make my own company. So
Wow.
like dads do. He's like, sure, I'll let you spin this off if you find a customer that wants to pay for drone delivery. So
And a job for him, right?
absolutely. Right. Best advice I ever got, and I would give it to my own children, is find somebody that's going to pay for it before you jump. But Amazon had been doing drone delivery or talking about drone delivery, and they just bought Whole Foods. So they were talking about doing it for grocery. So I started looking at grocery chains, and Kroger, there's no Kroger on the Northeast at all, but it lit up off the map because within 3 miles of every Kroger, you reach 100 million people. So
Really?
it's a third of the US population is living within a very comfortable drone delivery distance from a Kroger or Kroger brand store. And
Wow.
even though Walmart has more stores, we all
Yeah.
know Walmarts are like on the side of a highway sometimes. They're in
Yeah.
an industrial area. But the Kroger stores, I mean, homes are right behind them. They're in your neighborhood. And I just started stalking them from New York, taking my poor 4 children and my husband. Every vacation was to Cincinnati, where their headquarters was.
Did not know
And
that. Good to
yes, it
know.
was an 11-hour drive, and just trying to be in the neighborhood, if you will, to get a meeting with them. And eventually it paid off, and we signed a contract with them in 2020. So right at the start of the pandemic, and they picked a store to fly from that was in Dayton. So Dayton is like a suburb of Cincinnati. It's about 45 minutes north. So we ended up putting the company in Dayton, and I moved my family and my 4 kids and my husband out here. And it's from living in the tri-state area to here in Ohio, it's like you won the lotteries. It's just, it's still it's great in that respect.
Well, it's
Uh,
interesting because as before we started the podcast, we were talking a little bit about the birthplace of aviation. So if you have a bicycle shop on your property, we know you're in the right sector, right? Getting things going.
exactly. Yeah.
So your dad was an engineer too,
Yep,
or
my dad is
uh,
an electrical engineer. I have only brothers. They're all
okay.
engineers too.
Wow. So the whole family. Do you
Yeah.
think your kids are going into
My
engineering?
son is already in mechanical engineering at Miami
Real
University of Ohio.
congratulations!
Yeah,
Congratulations!
and
That's
he
fantastic.
he interns here again in the summer. So he's got that. But we'll see. I have 3 girls afterwards. We'll see if they do the engineering thing too.
Well, I'll say just up front, I think you being the CEO of the company and running it, but having the financial background and the engineering background, that probably is a nice mirroring for your company, right? You got to understand both sides of production and also revenue, right?
Yes, and that's unfortunately, I think, why a lot of technology companies don't do so well, is because
Yeah.
engineers like to build. You just
Right.
want to build. You don't think about the money, and more likely you're thinking about how do you do the building. Whereas I was immediately like, I need to get investors. I need to get
Yeah.
somebody to fund this.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of the engineers that I know would put their money into doing it and building it and spending that time. And it's that I spent my time trying to get other people to pay for it and then hire engineers.
That's
So
smart. You said good
that
advice,
was a
like you
little,
said.
so that definitely helped. I think a lot of people are very scared of investors, and I've had
Yeah.
nothing but positive experiences with our
Yeah. No, that's,
investors, which
yeah.
is
So
great.
you're a publicly traded company then. Is that
No,
correct?
we are a
You're not.
private
Okay.
company. We're still
Private company
private.
with private investors. Okay.
Yeah.
Again, doing research, and we'll find out if online it gives lies or whatnot. But I had read once that a quote that you'd given about managing your own errands and your kids and pharmacy run. You have 4 kids, is that correct?
I have 4 kids. Yeah.
Is that accurate? I know you mentioned part of this process, your father and talking you into it, but did you see that gap in drone delivery as well when you you mentioned the Kroger, and it's 100 million people within all their stores, I'm assuming,
Yeah, within 3 miles of all of
of
their
all their,
stores. So they have a lot of
wow.
brands. They have Ralph's,
Yeah.
they have King Supers.
Okay.
They're the biggest supermarket chain
Wow.
alone, just supermarket. Yeah. But
And so
yes, it
yeah,
absolutely was driven by a need.
yeah,
It was driven by a
yeah,
need of a mom who had to and one time my daughter was sick, and I brought her to the doctor, and I had to bring all these kids with me into Walgreens to wait for the prescription to be filled. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. If this kid's getting everybody sick, getting my kids sick, like there has to be a better way to get things delivered right to your house,
yeah.
and this was well before anybody was doing DoorDash or anything like that. It was just starting back then.
Yeah.
So,
Are you actively doing deliveries then with Kroger? Is that happening now?
so we're actually delivering for Grubhub right now in New
Oh,
Jersey,
okay.
right outside of New
Okay.
York City, because
Congratulations.
we are trying to be the urban drone delivery company. This is an urban solution. This is not for rural deliveries. So, and we are working with Kroger to see if we could turn that back on soon too. But we We were trying different opportunities and delivering for different partners because we're still trying to learn what's the
Yeah.
best thing, where's the most volume gonna come from.
It's my day job. I manage an airport. So this is year 25 for me in aviation. And I fly and I do all those fun stuff. I've never actually used a drone myself, but I've seen people and I've seen people fly them into the airports, unfortunately,
Yeah.
sometimes. But how, because I see just recently, we got a notice that Amazon is wanting to start drone delivery, very similar to what you just said, in the
Yeah.
suburbs outside of Chicago. And they ping this area, they ping certain areas that, they want to do at least test deliveries in. How's your kind of thought on how the FAA is working? A lot of the stuff that I read online, you actually seem pretty complimentary towards the FAA, which I'll say in our industry doesn't always go hand in hand, but it seemed like you were, you know, at least working towards a common goal, common solution with them.
Yeah, I always refer to the FAA as our collaborators.
Okay.
We have learned so much from them because this is a totally new industry. So we started building our aircraft and we didn't know to build it for regulations. We didn't know what the regulations were. So they were incredibly patient, teaching us how to certify it for airworthiness. I mean, you're talking about every single component, full traceability, making sure everything, in order to get traceability, the parts have to be American, usually, or from an allied nation. So most of our aircraft is American made, even all the parts, which
Wow.
is incredible.
Yeah.
And in terms of operations, when you realize like all of their rules were written in blood, that's what they say,
Yeah,
it's like
that's
you're
true.
learning from bad things that have happened.
Yep.
And they said we were unique too, and that we didn't fight with them. A lot of the other drone companies were like, this is overkill. This is ridiculous. But we didn't. We were just kind of like, teach us, tell us how we're supposed to do this. And that's why we now are a domestic air carrier. We have a Part 135, and we also have a certification on the aircraft as airworthy. So those two certificates together, there's only 4 of us in the country. It's Amazon, Google Wing, Zipline, and us.
Wow,
So,
congratulations.
yeah, so we owe a lot to the FAA. They definitely had us build a better aircraft, for sure.
So in that it goes, I guess, to some of the quotes that I saw on when I was researching you about how you through your process, you realize you're not creating well, you're creating a drone company, but you're creating an airline. I think it was that one of
Yes.
the quotes. Yeah. And that says that's interesting to me as well, because when you look at like 107, like the drone, because you mentioned earlier, I have some friends that fly recreation drones, and I think some of the issues they've been having now is most of the components are made in China and with restrictions. But
Yeah.
you said you're not having that, which is great. But two, I guess I didn't realize, and maybe that's my own edification here, but why do you need a 135 certificate?
Well, I will go into all of this
Good.
detail
Sorry,
for
go ahead.
you. So
Yeah.
when you're an airline, it gives you this umbrella for things to roll up to. So we have a training program that's part of being an airline. So every single pilot, anybody that flies one of our aircraft has to be trained and certified according to our training program. If you're just flying 107, there's nobody above you telling you to make sure you meet those certifications. After training, you have to have a third class medical certificate, same as in manned aviation. We have a drug and alcohol program. We also have a maintenance program on the aircraft. So all of the aircraft have to have routine maintenance, same process if something goes wrong, how you pull them out, how you check everything. So and including monitoring your airspace. So that's what the airline does is it takes all these individual pilots and it gives a hierarchy over to say you have to meet these things that are defined as the airline level. And when you think about it that way, you realize like these are important things. If you didn't have an airline and you just had 100 people with 107s, how do you know they're all trained right? How do you know that somebody wasn't drinking that morning? How do you know that
Yeah.
that person was maintaining the aircraft right or taking that maintenance really seriously? That's what makes, manned aviation so safe. It's the safest form of travel in the world. And the last thing you want are drones to come in and hurt that record. So this is all about trying to make sure that we take it just as seriously. So in our Part 135, there's 3 people that have to be in every 135. You have a director of operations, you have a chief pilot, and you have a director of maintenance. And all of them have to have worked in a manned aviation 135 or 121 in the most recent history, because you want them to bring that same level of discipline to unmanned operations. They don't say, "Oh, well, you're an unmanned airline, go hire whoever you want." They want
Right.
these people that come in with that knowledge. So that's why I'm a big believer in all of this, because that shouldn't go away, a lot of the stuff that we're doing.
Yeah, it's interesting to me because, like where I'm at, my day job, a 135, on demand charter people, on demand charter coming in often. One of the things for us is, well, one, it's a very competitive space, right? There's only so many they give out and blah, 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 135 certificates. But it's interesting because, 107 back in the day used to be airport security till, the TSA took over. They got rid of that. Basically they had that available. So I guess in my mind, I would have thought they would have created, a certificate, removed from maybe like on-demand charter. So that's new to me, and it's interesting. But I get some of the reasoning that you mentioned why, because it's very rigid, and to your point, it is the safest mode of transportation. But that's a new one. Do you think, as your competitors, people are expanding the space, do you think 135 is where the FAA will continue to keep like UAS operators?
I do believe that. I think you'll always have to have an airline
Yeah.
because, again, like I said, you have to have something doing training, and you can't do that at the individual level. They are pushing a new thing called Part 108, which is supposed to help for BV loss operations, but in a smaller capacity. Like if you want to do utility line inspections and it has to go BV loss, there's some things that you're going to be able to do a little bit more than 107 would allow you to do, but there's still a lot of steps you have to go through. You still have to, do it at a higher level. But you can't fly cargo for compensation in the airspace without a 135. And I think when it comes to drone deliveries, that airline umbrella is always going to be there because you have to have these rules in place,
Yeah.
especially if you're doing high volume,
Yeah.
which is what drone delivery is going to be.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective because you're right. The FAA does divide everything up a lot of times between for profit if you're getting hired to do something. And so it's an interesting perspective because you're right, because 107 folks are probably mostly recreational, I would think. So how big are your drones? Because I did see, is it a hexacopter? Is that the design? Am I getting that right?
So we have a hexacopter. We have 2 aircraft. Our
Okay.
hexacopter, the DE 2020, is the one we got certified first. It can lift 5 pounds, which is kind
Okay.
of the industry standard. It was set by Amazon. Amazon actually said
Okay.
86% of their deliveries are under 5 pounds. And we
Oh,
all
wow.
get them,
We
the little
do, yeah, yeah.
bags. Like
Whatever.
they are,
Yeah, that
they are
sounds right.
definitely
Yeah.
right. But
Right, you're
now
right.
when you want to do food and things, so our next aircraft carries 20 pounds, and
Okay.
that's a quadcopter. So in the beginning, the FAA didn't like parachutes.
Yeah.
They told us parachutes lead to lazy engineering. And as an engineer, I understood that. I was
Okay.
like, yeah, I get it. Like if I'm building something and I know it's got a parachute on it,
Yeah.
people are going to start,
Yeah.
cutting
Yeah.
corners.
Seems
But
fair.
yeah, but public perception changed and they really like the parachute. They like the idea of
Okay.
having a parachute. So they said, please add the parachute to your aircraft. So we had originally designed it without a parachute to stay in the air with 1 motor down. So you needed
Okay.
6 motors. You can't stay in the air with 1 motor down with 4 motors. But once we put the parachute on, we're like, what do we need 6 motors for? So now we have a quad, which allows us to have much bigger motors because the props can extend farther. And that's why it can carry a lot more. People think that the more motors you have, the more lift you have,
Yeah.
but it isn't linear like
Is it?
that. You're carrying more weight. It's a totally different thing. So it's actually better to have just 4.
When do
Yeah.
because it's an interesting perspective for me, just one, I'm in the industry, but two, just as a citizen of the world. I, you're in your backyard. There's been times where probably 5, 6 times in my life where there's a drone, recreation drone. I never actually have seen one that's been for hire, come into your backspace. And it does feel, like there's this intrusion into your privacy. How do you combat that? Or what do you think when you look at the general public adapting into this space? Is the projection, is the idea for drones to follow like roadways, or is it anywhere to the shortest point? Because I'll just say I do think there's a part of it in your mind when you're like, well, if you have thousands, millions of these things going through the air, are people going to want them in their backyard? If it's not for them, right? If it's for your neighbor or someone down the road.
Right. So our aircraft fly at 400 feet. So
Okay.
at full height, you don't even see this
Don't even sit.
aircraft. If
Okay.
you do, our 2020, our DE 2020 goes at 40 miles an hour, but the new aircraft flies at 70 miles an hour. So even if you
Okay.
noticed a drone in your property, it's
Okay.
not in your property anymore.
It's hollowed by.
But as you lower down so we lower down to around 15 feet, and then we use a
Okay.
winch that lowers the rest of the way, the neighbors will see it. And that's why we have focused really hard on making sure our drone is very quiet. And we've been tested as the quietest by
Oh
the
wow.
FAA
Yeah.
because we're trying not to be an imposition on anybody's life. We're trying to show drones as like something that gets the truck off the road, that
Yeah.
is an improvement. It's
Yeah.
eco-friendly, so we don't want it to be just this big scary thing. And I think part of having a female running a robotics company is I've put a lot of effort into not just that it works, but that it looks good too.
Looks yeah.
So
Yeah. No, that's it's kind of the unknown, right? And it's we hear a lot about it here too, like, eVTOL, that type of the side of the world as well. And if they come to scale, how does that change? We're actually on the Advanced Air Mobility Working Group for the state of Illinois. And, part of that more was in the eVTOL realm, but drones as well. Literally, like I said, we got the notification a few weeks ago that Amazon is looking to start drone delivery all through suburbs, and so it's interesting, but I love that you're, adding in some of the aesthetic stuff because someone has been in this industry for a long time, just something new and different, right? It's just starts to oh, what's that on a rope coming down at my neighbor's house? Uh, but
It
yeah,
it is, but people are excited about it. I mean,
yeah,
we went live in New Jersey, and I don't know if you
yeah,
know those people, but they are
ah,
not
yeah,
known.
no,
They are my people, but they are not known for taking kindly to new things. And like
it's true.
70% of the people polled to sign up signed up. Like 70% of the people signed up for drone
Wow,
delivery, which is huge because in very dense areas like that, even if you could drive there, you can't park there. Like there's a big problem when you live in these very congested areas,
yeah,
and that's why we're focused on that. Our competitors are really focused on rural areas, but we're really trying to get to those major cities where this is the biggest benefit that they've ever seen. They've never had this, so that's
yeah.
why people really want this. I always say, I hear from people that DoorDash does a great job of making you hate DoorDash,
It does.
and every people are looking for another option. The restaurants are looking for another option. The people are looking for
Yeah.
a better option. And to have nobody touching your food, there's a lot of benefits to this.
Yeah, I was just in Los Angeles last month and I got in a Waymo and I completely geeked out. I had a lovely time. Few minor things here and there, but it was very enjoyable, taking that
Yeah.
leap into new technology. But you mentioned the space like New Jersey. How would one of these work if you do live in like a high rise? Is there like a communal spot where it drops down like by the entryway, or does it come into if you have a porch or
So in the near term, we deliver to a certain designated spot that's
okay.
in the complex. But in the future, and this is where I get really excited about it, is that these, especially because from New York City, like all of these buildings are eventually going to have their own robot.
Yeah.
People don't realize that, and that
Yeah.
you are going to, and these robots will talk to each other. That's the really cool thing. Uber Eats will never hand off to a DoorDash driver. Even if they could, they're never going to get to the same spot. Like they just don't speak the same language
Yeah.
in that coordination. But robots do. So imagine a drone going to a high-rise building anywhere, and it'll start talking to that building. The robot there saying, "I'm coming in. I'm going to be here at exactly 3:57." It'll lower down and put it on the robot or in a receptacle. The robot will leave the building through a doggy door. It'll go outside, get it, bring it back in. It knows it's building, so it
Yeah.
knows how to go in the elevator. It knows that the person in 5A likes it left outside, or this one wants it brought inside. That's like where this is all headed. And that's how you're going to see it, especially in New York City. All of these, I mean, we're not going to get rid of our doormen because we love our doormen, but but they will all have these robots that will go outside and meet up with the delivery and bring it in and bring it upstairs. And you can imagine, like, I lived with a doorman. He couldn't leave the front desk. I had to come downstairs and get it.
Yeah.
These ground robots are going to be able to bring it up right to their front door. And that's the world I'm really excited to live in. When you see these robotics working together, then it sky's the limit, like what we're going to be able to do.
Yeah, no, I love to hear from someone like you who's an expert at it, the cooperation, because so many times in my daily life, dealing with different technology, even, in the office, it's, oh, well, this doesn't talk to that. That won't talk to this. And yeah, you were like, if everything talked to each other, it'd be a lot easier. But then it's like, oh, well, that's proprietary. But I love you being the expert saying that at some point, because I'm assuming the robot owned by the building is obviously a different software developer, or are you saying that like your business would develop that robot too, or are you just saying you would work together?
No, we would just work together. We would
I love
just
it.
speak a
Yeah,
common messaging
that's great.
protocol
Yeah.
and find a way to communicate together. A lot of this is open source. A lot of the communication is open source, and that's the integration should be really quick. But it's not just, I mean, I talk about the drone as being an IoT device. It is. All of these robots are,
Can I
but
ask
it's
what that is, IoT? Don't know
and
if that.
the internet of things. So like anything
Okay.
that
Okay.
has an IP address is something that
Okay.
can connect. So we're like an
Okay.
edge device of these internet of things, of mobile platforms, light switches, Alexas, all these different things are like
Yeah.
considered IoT
Okay.
devices. And but I talk about smart refrigerators, and today you could easily scan something and it could place an order for you. Say, I
Yeah.
just finished this cheese. Scan the UPC. But it doesn't, because it can't order one thing at a time. But drones
Yeah.
will, and they'll do it in
Yeah.
a way that's so cost effective and cheap that our fridges will start getting smarter, and they'll be able to start ordering for us. And they'll know it's 4 o'clock. There's no protein in here. Let me order, ground beef so you'll be able to make dinner. This is going to spur innovation. So that's why I get very upset when people say, well, drones are going to take jobs from DoorDash drivers. And I'm like, it's going to create jobs everywhere. This is
Yeah.
the fundamentals of AI right here.
Right.
Drones deliver to a person, not an
Yeah.
address. You get to do amazing things.
Well, it was
Sorry, I get
interesting.
very excited,
No, no,
obviously,
no.
about
I know.
this.
I love it. It's interesting because doing this like kind of format. The last podcast I had up was with the CEO of a company called Silent Falcon, and they have drones that do airfield and it's pavement inspections. It could be airfield, it could be any sort of, you want to scan a parking lot type of thing and get an
Yeah.
assessment on that. And I'll put it out, and most people are always very positive. Usually, but you're putting stuff on the internet, so there's just going to be reality of that. But some people they were like, oh, it's going to take jobs, and this is an evil technology, and because part of that, and I would assume yours is what, the trigger kind of right now for some people, AI, right? You say it. A lot of people are supportive of it. Some people think it's going to end the world. But it's funny because you do, when you get out, I'm like, okay, get some comments in. I'm like, okay, right. But it's funny because you're talking about, your devices talking, and I had bought a smart washer and dryer, and it's hooked up to the Wi-Fi, but I was
Right.
washing the clothes, right? And so I'm sitting on the couch one night, and I start on my phone, I'm getting like dings, and I'm like, what's this? And it's messages from the dryer, and it's recipes, like food recipes. And my first thought was, did it read like, it was like, oh, this fat guy just ate spaghetti and he spilled it on his shirt. He threw it in the water. We should send him something for rigatoni. But no, it's interesting because it's things are always adapting and changing, especially in this side of the world, right? You like we have a lot of younger people that are coming in, obviously, into our side of the industry, and the thought is, well, at some point, am I not in the equation? But someone like you, who's an expert on it, it says, yeah, you're in the equation, maybe differently, right? Is I think is kind of the gist of what you're saying, right?
Yeah, and what's great about drones is you don't need a college degree.
Yeah,
This is finally a technology where 16 years old, you can go and get your pilot's license, fly a drone around, and you don't have to, go through 4 years and then get an advanced degree. And all. People are
yeah,
starting out at the bottom level and learning this stuff really quickly. There's never been anything like that in technology. You've always had to go
yeah.
and, go to programming school or something. This is very, very unique in that anybody who loves this can just become a part of it.
So there is a human currently in the ones that are flying in New Jersey that are operating those. It's not autonomous.
No, it's fully autonomous, but we have like air traffic control, just like in
Okay.
in manned aviation. So we
Yeah.
have, I call them pilots, but I have to start using that air traffic control because they're remote and they watch the flights. They
Yeah.
get to see if a drone, we have software that shows a drone will flash if it's having a problem. And they can say, okay, launch your parachute, land, go to a safe zone. That's really all they can do. But
Yeah.
we do call them pilots. But all of that, all those new things, all of the drone boxes, the delivery receptacles, all this stuff is all
Yeah.
new. It's all getting developed today.
Yeah, I had a presentation. You would probably know because you're on the it sounded like one of 4 companies, that are major in the space, but it was out of, I believe, Alliance, Texas. They manage the airport there, but they also are in the drone sector, and it was a presentation, and I think it was Arby's, but they basically were showing the drone going in, the staff loading it into the drone, and the drone going up and heading off to whoever's house, but,
Yeah.
it did seem effective. It seemed like it was working well.
Yeah, it does. I mean, there's the greatest thing about drones is that it's the same cost and same time for any delivery anywhere in the world. There's never been anything in logistics that you can time so precisely. Never.
Yeah.
There's no downtime. There's no person that, or pilot that's rushing, or there's a flight that's delayed. This is so precise that you can now start writing software and really utilizing these aircraft in different ways and making sure that the food, I mean, is going to get there faster than if they picked it up themselves.
Yeah.
There's never been anything like that.
In New Jersey, how you've been operating how long now in New Jersey with Kroger?
We're with Grubhub in New
Oh,
Jersey,
Grubhub, I'm
almost
sorry,
3 months now.
3 months.
Yeah.
How many deliveries do you say in a day you typically do?
We don't do a lot. We're doing in like the 10, 20 kind of range
Okay,
because we're still, people are still getting used to the fact that drone delivery is available. We also have a smaller payload, so we can't carry
okay.
as much as what they're delivering. So the new aircraft coming out is definitely going to be the one that produces a lot more volume in the food sector
And
for
with
us.
your air traffic controller or pilot, is it one person, like, say, like, if you're doing 20 in a day, is that one person that could manage that, or is there a limit on how many drones in the air one person can is there a ratio
So
tied to that?
the FAA wants us to get to 1 to 40. So 1 air traffic controller to monitor 40 aircraft. And
Okay.
each one of our aircraft can do 4 deliveries in an hour.
Oh, wow.
So you have 1 hour of labor for potentially 160 deliveries.
Wow.
There's never been anything like that. So
Is
yeah,
that,
that's the differentiator right
yeah,
there.
is it like that drone that's going back and forth, how many I guess after that hour, is that when it needs to be recharged? Is that or when
No, we charge about every delivery or 2. We hot swap. We pull the battery,
Oh,
put a new battery in, and
okay.
let it go.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
because we don't want
Okay.
any downtime.
Yeah.
But eventually, we're gonna have perches for charging, for
Yeah.
contact charging.
So, like, right now in this environment, I know you said your relationship with the FAA is pretty good. So, regulatory-wise, like I'd say, like, Chicago, because 'cause we're working with the state and the FAA on this plan to try to incorporate UAS into existing airspace around us. Because probably the same as New Jersey, one of the more complicated airspaces in the world.
Yeah.
Chicago's one of those as well. Do you find that we're in a good spot regulatory wise with the FAA, or are there things that you're like, yeah, that's standing in the way, that needs to go, or are there things you're championing for collectively to try to open this market up a bit?
Right now, it's the closest it's ever been, but there is one issue that is still outstanding, is that most aircraft announce where they are using ADS-B.
Yeah.
It is not a requirement, though, to announce on ADS-B. So there are a very small, I think it's like 1% of flyers out there that just choose not to announce where they are in time and space, which puts drones at a disadvantage. It puts even aircraft at a disadvantage because it requires human eyes and a human to identify that something is out there. And that is something that desperately needs to change. If you want to fly in the airspace, you should say where you are to protect everybody, to make sure that everybody is safe. I know it's a big issue that the FAA is trying to combat because that's the way it's been. And the group that doesn't want to announce where they are is a very vocal
Yeah.
group. So what they've asked for in Part 108 is saying, it's fine. You don't want to announce where you are or use ADS-B. You have to yield right of way to drones. And that is something that, I mean, they're unhappy about, but that's what it's going to take, is that you can't expect progress, all these new
Yeah.
technologies to yield to an older way of flying. So
Yeah.
that's one of the things they're putting in there to combat that.
So I'm assuming that's the Rotor Act that is in the Senate right now, which came about with the DCA crash about having ADS-B on all the time for all aircraft. Is that the
That's
legislation?
part of it. So
Okay.
this was going on well before this
Yeah.
fight with drones, but
Yeah.
yeah, after that flight in Washington D.C., I mean, that aircraft could have moved out of the way if it knew. And it's like, why wouldn't you just announce where you
Right.
are? This so that is that unfortunately was a
Yeah.
very obvious view of why this should not be
Yeah.
allowed in
And
commercial airspace.
yeah, in the
If you wanna
markets that
fly on a military base, go ahead. Don't say who you are, where you are. But if you're flying where
right.
all in this such heavily congested airspace, it shouldn't have been left up
Yeah.
to a human
Yeah.
to make a decision whether they saw that aircraft or not. It's a
Right.
tragedy.
Well, that's what I was gonna ask you about the areas that you work in, because you mentioned more the, suburban areas, which if it's suburban, probably is already under class airspace. Like here, it's mostly class Bravo airspace outside from O'Hare. And at 400 feet, what are you thinking, or on the drone side, is the conflicts that you would expect at 400 feet? Are you more concerned navigating an airspace around an active airport? Because unless there's an issue, I'm trying to think transition wise, why an aircraft legally it couldn't be that low unless it
Well
was going into an airport
well,
in a
it's
suburban area.
actually Yeah, it's actually not, we're not afraid of airports. Airports, especially Mode C
Yeah.
Vale is great for us where
Yeah.
you have to say where you are. But
Right.
the thing is, a medevac helicopter, life flight, all of those, they could pick up from
Okay.
your front yard. They could
Gotcha.
pick up from
Yeah.
anywhere and fly
Okay.
right into a drone
Gotcha.
space. So
Okay.
that's why you have to be really careful anywhere.
Sure.
Even in any airspace
Yeah.
that is potential. So you need to be having the drone. So our drones carry an ADS-B receiver on them, and
Okay.
we have one local to the air traffic controllers that will say, because most life flight are announcing ADS-B. They are saying where they are, but
Yeah.
that's the risk, is really those guys, and we definitely don't want to be the ones that get in their way if
It seems
they're
fair. Yeah. Right. It's not good
they're,
for
they're
anybody.
no, if they're lifting up from an accident on the
Yeah.
turnpike, like we don't want to
Yeah.
get in your way.
Sure. No, that makes it. Well, so where do you see kind of this industry going in the next, let's say, 5 years? Do you see it getting to some scale where it's widely available? Do you think it will still be in select markets? What are your thoughts on where you see this going?
I think the demand, once you start rolling out to several markets, the demand from the consumer is going to be overwhelming. People are really going to see that we don't charge up on the items. It's $5 a delivery. We can even get less as we get more volume. You don't have anybody eating your food. It's eco-friendly, so you don't have any guilt when you order it. It's anonymous. There's nobody knocking on your door and knows
Yeah.
where you live. I mean, there's no tipping, which is the biggest
Yeah.
problem that you hear from a lot of this,
Yeah.
and it even delivers at night. So there's so many benefits that we think in 5 years it will be everywhere. It will be,
Yeah.
totally across this country. But what we're hoping to see is that, you'll see different sizes aircraft, different, more routing. So, for
Yeah.
example, our aircraft that carries 20 pounds, you can look at it and say, well, now it can carry 4 deliveries of 5 pounds, maybe not one
Yeah.
big delivery. And then
Right.
you'll start to see routing and planning and AI saying, this store has most of the orders coming in between this hour and this hour. So, put a lot of aircraft over here, move them around. That's important. And also to guide things on the ground. We have so much video, live video feed that, we say someday you're going to go to Zillow to look at a house and you're going to see that house being built. You're going to
Yeah.
see what's happened to it over time just as a byproduct of drones flying around.
Yeah.
And that's where, like, because we say data is the new oil, and
Right.
we're gonna have the first of it. So I am really excited to see what happens in 5 years with all of this, because it's not just drone delivery, but it will be in every metropolitan area for sure in 5 years.
Yeah, it's interesting to me because as you look at, technology, I always say with like EV tolls, I don't know, question mark, but TNCs, that was one that was kind of by surprise. I was working in California at the time, and when Uber and Lyft started coming around, I was like, oh well, and then it just took over the market, and it completely changed the way an airport operates because you had all of this area staged for taxi cabs, right? Because that you weren't prearranging, so you'd have hundreds of vehicles. You'd have a whole lot dedicated to it, and then really within like a 12 to 24-month period, it shifted where people are calling, hitting the button on their phone, and someone's coming around. And okay, how do you figure, how do you change the mechanics of just brick and mortar of how the airport's operating? So it is an interesting perspective. It's funny because when you were talking about data and stuff, that's some of and the reality is the comments that you hear from people, right? Is, oh, you're taking video of this because we'll get it here. We'll get people that will call up and say, "Yeah, there's an aircraft that goes over my house. I know they're videotaping me, et cetera, et cetera." And so it is. To your point you made earlier. It seems like it's a smaller segment of the population, but it is. It's interesting to see how it'll continue to evolve and change, especially trying to mirror everything into one airspace above your head that, people don't really realize because you hear even the effects of traditional aircraft, right? Of its noise, its pollution, and not that that's a big part of the population, but there is that. So I will be curious to see as it continues to go. And I'm actually looking forward. I've never been offered a drone delivery. I would love
Oh,
it
yeah.
just as much as I love the Waymo. I would love to get something out of drone delivery. I would just be fascinated to see not only your parachute if it came out, but the
No.
grapple coming. No, no,
Hopefully, you'll
no,
never see
no.
that,
Yeah,
but yeah. No, it's really great, and another thing that it does is that it breaks the link between you and an address. Drones
yeah.
deliver one delivery, so you don't even have to be at home. You could be at your kid's soccer game and you
That's
forgot the orange slices, you could be on a hike and need water, you could be on a boat in the middle of a lake and
right.
drones will be able to deliver to you. And once you start realizing, like, something like Uber, like, why are we still
Yeah,
attached to an address? Why do I still have to order food to my office or a hotel or know where I am? I'm my own me. It should know where
yeah.
I am. I'm walking around with a giant tracker in my pocket. Why logistics hasn't adapted is because routing software requires an address.
No,
And then that's why it's
yeah.
been stuck that way.
You
But
it's an
it's not that
interesting
going to be that way anymore.
yeah. No, it's an interesting perspective because someone like me who's follically challenged, I could think about those times that I'm out hiking or something like, oh, I forgot to bring sunscreen, and then boom, just have it float down from the sky. That's not a bad
Or a
thought.
hat. Yeah.
Or hey, you know what? Even that, maybe a hat. Throw me down a hat. So do you
But yeah.
yeah.
But we think about even first aid kits. We talk about
Yeah.
roadside assistance.
Yeah.
If you're stuck in a traffic jam, you really
Yeah.
need something, even if it's just you run out of gas. These are all things drones will be able to get to you where a normal car can't.
Yeah. Yeah. No, do you have any anticipation how many drones you could, how do you, if it's proprietary, you don't have to say, but how many you expect to have or how many you have now or what? Because in my mind, I'm thinking, I don't even know, like, what's astonishing. Is 5,000 drones in your network? I don't know. I don't know.
It'll be thousands. It'll be
Yeah,
thousands of aircraft, but I specifically this company, we're focused on trying to we call it hyper utilization. That's the AI that we're building in-house is to make sure
yeah,
that these aircraft are utilized in a way they're not going out and back. You don't do that in manned aviation. Aircraft
yeah,
don't have a home. They're being used constantly, and drones should be too. So we don't want to have the sky blocked out by all of these drones. We want these drones to keep getting smarter and smarter
yeah,
to be able to do more deliveries and not have to say, "Oh, I'm doing 5 deliveries, I need 5 drones." Like
right.
that, we should become better. And
Yeah,
we will as
yeah,
this keeps adapting. I mean, the first car was not a truck, it was like they kept getting
yeah,
better and better over time. So you're going to see that too with
yeah.
drones.
Do you fly, Beth,
Do I
yourself?
fly? I
Do
have
you
a
fly?
107.
Okay.
I have a 107, but I don't fly our aircraft because it's autonomous now. It's
Yeah.
just that is you push a button, that's it. It's not as much fun. But I was our first 107 pilot. That was
Wow,
one of the first things
congratulations.
I went out to do.
So
But
the aviation
yeah.
bug is a little bit there. Do you think you'll wanna actually fly someday yourself, or no? Is it more
In
UAS?
manned aviation,
Yeah, man. Yeah,
I probably would. I probably would.
okay.
I just have always looked up. I've just loved aviation,
Yeah.
but since I was a kid, so maybe. Well, we'll see.
No, I love that. So you think we're at a kind of a period now, 20 years, people looking back on it. This is kind of the infant stages of this technology, and everybody's gonna think, geez, I can't believe we didn't have how did we live before this?
Yeah, that's what I think, and I think we've lived through this with, we've
Yeah.
all been there for the cell phones
Yeah.
that got created. There were people saying back then, they have phones in cars. Why would you ever need to carry a cell phone? Like, you've
Yeah.
had people, non-believers, the naysayers, they've been everywhere all throughout,
It's
for
always
any
there.
great technology. Even, when you talk about word processing and all that, people
Yeah.
were like, "There's no way," but they have to my secretary knows my voice and she can dictate, but, like, it was absolutely anything else, but we've lived through so many iterations of true change in
Yeah.
our lifetime, the
Right.
rise of the internet.
Uh,
Like, I was using phone books still when I was a little kid, so
I was too.
yeah, so it's like, why is it so hard to believe for us to say, well, maybe there's a new way to transport things? We talk
Yeah.
about energy, and
Yeah.
people think like that's one and done. Like there are no alternative energy out there, and it's like,
Right.
electricity isn't that old. Like, but people tend to immediately think like, close the patent office. Everything that's been created has been created. And I am just it's amazing to me, and I use the elevator always as an example of, like, people elevator accidents were constant. People
Yeah.
don't realize that, and the automated elevator eliminated all accidents, but people were
Yeah.
so scared that they
Yeah.
made you have an
Right.
attendant in
Right.
there
Right.
just to
Right.
hit the button.
Right.
I mean, human like, we stand in our own way
We
sometimes. It's
do.
just crazy to me. Word processing eliminated a lot more jobs and secretaries and all of this kind of stuff that used to exist than
Yeah.
drones ever could. But,
Yeah.
we don't remember, all of these changes. It's just, here now.
Yeah, it's the unknown, right? It's funny. I think you have a beautiful message and you have a great way of presenting it. And you hear it a lot, and it's funny because it sounds cheesy, but I'll say it. But if you ever go to Disney and you get on the Carousel of Progress, which was Walt Disney's favorite ride, they go through different iterations. I think they start in the 20s and they pop through around somewhere probably near 2000, but every one of them is, the ice box and then the refrigerator and then the phone and electricity. And so each time they go through one, the standard line is, it'll never work. It's like, I hear two guys trying to come up with a flying contraption. It will never work. And, it is. I mean, I think that's one of the great things about the human mind, right? It's adapting and changing. And, it's, I love seeing people like you that are smart enough because one, I know my limitations. I can't figure that out. I'll watch it from down here and be like, oh, yeah, look, yeah, that's not. But it is, and it does. When you started talking about things like, you referenced earlier not getting the helicopter's way and an ADSB and that's all that reality. But then when you started talking about what you could do with a drone, and if you were hurt out in the middle of nowhere and it can drop in a first aid kit or something to you, absolutely. Not only would you want it, but you want it for your loved ones. And if you're a decent human being, you'd want it for anybody. So I love the
Yeah.
mission and what you guys are trying to do with it.
And especially disaster recovery too. I
Yeah.
mean, there are times roads are not passable. It's not an
Yeah.
option. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think there are only benefits to this, but people don't realize, I'm in Dayton. People were not happy with the Wright brothers aircraft either. They were
No,
attacked
they were.
constantly. They said this is only going to carry a flea. This is never going to do anything. And then when the war started and people started realizing you can carry munitions on these things, then they hated it too, and it's going to rain fire on everybody. People are never going to be satisfied. You're always going to have some people that stand in the
Yeah.
way, but I think once I explain it to them in a way that this is just so much better overall for all of us, that people realize like maybe they should get behind this.
Yeah, I've mentioned it on this podcast before, but somebody I know said it to me, elected official, and they they had heard from a constituent, and they came in to do a public comment, and they said, "Hey, I'm all for progress, absolutely. I just don't want any change." It's like, okay, well,
That's great.
yeah,
I
right,
That's a great. I like
yeah,
that.
right.
I like that.
But is there anything, Beth, I didn't ask you that you would want the listeners to know? Like I said, we have a large group that listen that are in our industry, whether they're pilots, they work at airports, they're engineers like yourself, or we also have a good group that are just like fascinated by what you do. But anything I didn't hit that you'd like people to know about your company and what you do?
Not really. I mean, you really kind of touched on everything. I mean, we always say, safety is our number one concern. Unfortunately, we do have a lot of posers in our industry. The that say you can go out as soon as I have people tell me, oh, but they can do this without regulations. I'm like, oh my God,
Right.
no. Like, the submersible that they built, the Ocean Gate, to go down to see the Titanic,
With the
that was led by a guy who said, "Who needs regulations?" And these regulations, and then it just proved people were something as so as simple as it should be round so that the pressure doesn't collapse this thing.
yeah,
He just was one of those, that said, "Oh, regulations are not necessarily." And for me, regulations just means like these are all the terrible things that have happened.
right,
So learn from them. Anytime I hear somebody say like, "Oh, the FAA is going to change, you're not going to need a 135. 108 is going to
right,
eliminate all." Really? So you don't want drug and alcohol testing for an air traffic controller? You don't want to have
right.
maintenance on the aircraft? You don't want to make sure it's done by a person who's trained on your aircraft? Like these are all things that are good. So I just always say, do you see a drone fly by, wave to the sky and say hi. So just that little bit of support, that's all we need.
Yeah, no, I love it. And I think there's a lot of like yourself, really smart people working on this side of it. And, as people in traditional side of aviation and a consumer, hopefully someday of the drone, it's nice to see the collaboration and working towards a common goal. I guess I would ask one last thing. Is there any country that you look at and say, well, maybe we should emulate what they're doing? Is there anybody besides us that's winning the race right now in drone delivery? Is China on the list? I mean, it's one off the top of my head, but
No,
no.
the FAA is really the gold
Okay.
standard around the world, like
Okay.
Boeing aircraft, the type certificate, like all these things are, the other nations usually follow what the FAA is doing. And I
Okay.
know that they've been working and watching what the FAA is implementing so they can implement it too. But I think what you're going to see is once we start operating here,
Yeah.
the demand in Europe and all these other places are going to flourish because it's kind of like cell phones. I mean, cell phones were usually every technology starts in the US and then
Yeah.
goes across the pond, but cell phones were different because it was very difficult to run wires in these old buildings in Europe. So
Yeah.
cell phones were you know adopted much quicker in Europe than they were in the United States.
I
And I
know
think
that.
drones are going to be the same thing because the traffic, the problems with parking, all of these things are much worse, in other cities around the world. I just came back from Sao Paulo a few months ago, and people are taking helicopters just to go 10 miles. Like, they can't drive anywhere
Yeah.
in that city. So once they see there's a way to do it, they're gonna
Yeah.
adopt it a lot quicker than everybody else. So that's where I think you're gonna see that momentum. So
Yeah.
it's gonna be an interesting 5 years.
Uh,
Yeah. that's for sure.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing how it goes and looking forward to see you on that stage. And first thing we'll have to get around here is a Kroger's. Once we get a Kroger's in place, we'll start running
Yeah.
from there.
Well,
But
we have a lot of different partners that we're going live with, so we're
yeah,
again, we're trying to learn different things from home improvement
yeah,
delivery to auto parts to pharmacy, you name it. Every type of drone delivery has its own use case, and we're trying to partner with different brands and different companies
yeah,
and try to try them all out. See if somebody, in a makeup at Ulta or Sephora wants, that somebody's
yeah.
watching a video on makeup and it's there in their hand in 15 minutes. Like these
Oh
are
yeah,
all I've
that's all.
got 3 daughters,
We should have just started there. We didn't have to go through the
right?
rest of it. Oh wait, I
Or
get
you
it, Miss Sephora.
like, how many men have seen their wives, like, so miserable when we try on an outfit and we're about to go out and we hate it,
Right,
and know that
right.
a pair of shoes can arrive in 15 minutes from a store in the mall, like, that's amazing.
It's not a
That's
bad thought. It's on
yeah,
demand, right?
so
Yeah,
that's
I
what
mean,
we're trying to do. If any of your viewers have any
you're
ideas of how to use drones, like, yeah, we'd
well,
love to hear it.
it's funny because, even in my side of the world, not, obviously the way I look, I'm not putting too much makeup on, but a little bit more on top of my head. But I was just, a few weeks ago, I was at home and I have the Walmart delivery, not a drone, but I was working on a bicycle in the garage and I needed 2 tubes and 2 tires. And I was like, I'll just order it. And, wasn't a drone, but it did, it was about an hour. But yeah, you cut that down. But it is. I mean, we're in an on-demand society. You want your stuff when you can get it, right? So, and then one last thing, when you mentioned all the data with it, delivery is where your focus is. But I mean, obviously, the people that I work with around here, they do building inspections and roof lines. We just had a builder in the other day switch to all drones. But are you guys strictly going to be in the delivery side of this, or do you see your company expanding into all sorts of different ideas with drones?
For right now, with our operators or the 135, we're going to stick with cargo. I think we're more likely to go to bigger cargo is a next step for us is eventually, be flying, between regional airports, real,
Yeah.
aircraft unmanned. That's more I see where us going than branching into all these different we've been approached by them too. Apparently to monitor a facade in New York City, you have to build all this scaffolding and have people taking pictures and they're like drones can do it in an afternoon. So we've heard a lot of different things, but I think that's where we're more likely, going to grow into
Yeah.
much bigger cargo. And I'm hoping that we're the one that flies that first 777 of cargo
Yeah.
from the US to Japan
Yeah.
unmanned. So,
Yeah.
let's do it.
Yeah, I
That's
mean,
yeah.
it's funny because when I was, doing, going to firework displays and stuff, it's like, oh, drones, they could never replace fireworks. But, I like fireworks, but I'll say some amazing drone shows. I was just out in Buckeye, Arizona at a air fair, and they had, I didn't say probably like 75, but, just what they could do with 75 drones and what they could make and
Yeah.
manipulate in the sky. It's amazing. So I love what you're doing there, and I'm looking forward to seeing your mission continue forward.
Well, me too. I hope we get to talk again in a few years and be
Yeah.
able to be like, do you remember the last time you were on? And
You won't want to talk about I'm not talking to that airport
yeah.
guy. Yeah,
Yeah, we
I got a 777 I gotta take care of.
no,
Tell
no,
him I'm something
never.
in a drone. But well, thank you, Beth. It's been such a pleasure getting to know you over this last hour,
Thank
and
you.
I'll make sure to put your company in the show notes. I'm assuming you have all your investors. I don't know if you're looking for more investors. I don't know.
We always look for investors. I mean, we
Yeah.
always look for believers.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Love it. All right,
always.
Beth.
And follow me on Instagram if you want the behind the
Okay.
scenes.
If, if I
We
I'll
have corporate Instagram and my personal Instagram if
okay.
you want to see what what it's like here.
If, I will try to find those, or if you have them, if you say I'll make sure to put them in the show notes if you want them in the show notes.
Okay, great.
All right. Thank you so much, Beth. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, that was a great conversation we had with Beth there. I'm looking forward to my next delivery, something coming in. Who knows what? Who knows what Jeff Miller could order? We talked about a lot of different things. It could be anything under the sun. Maybe I need a new elephant. Maybe I need a new airplane model. Maybe that microphone seems to be working pretty good. Who knows? I got plenty of stuff to point at behind me. If you're watching, if you're just listening, you can imagine an elephant behind my head. maybe a plane model. But thank you so much to Beth for coming on the show. If you would like to be on the show or you have someone that you would like to see showcased on the show, drop me a line at dapodcast85@gmail.com. As I learned from the last interview I did, if you have any comments on AI, feel free to drop them that way too. But thank you so much for coming along and listening. I'm going to get some of the videos out. I know I've been slacking on that. I keep saying I'm going to do it, so I will do it. I'm gonna crack down on it. Sometimes just putting all this together isn't always simplistic and easy, and it takes a lot of time. So I do appreciate everybody always tuning in and all the comments that I get in. I am working on that narrative episode, and I know a lot of empty promises at this point. So I know that a lot of people out there want certain things, and I will get it out, I promise. So just a little bit of time, and I'll be out the door. But again, thank you so much for tuning in. Until next time, friends, I'll see you down the runway.